In our recent interview, Joe Cherry has made this claim about Magic the Gathering's IP.
I actually think it would be a better idea for Magic, for recognition and to get more people into the game, to just get rid of original IP stuff going forward.
And just go full Universes Beyond.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just make that your game.
For more context, we'll link the video at the end of this one so that you can give it a better look. Definitely check that out. There's a ton of information there, and it includes Joe's plans for the future of Magic the Gathering content. As I was editing that video, I came to the realization that Magic the Gathering should continue to expand and explore their lore despite the success of the Universes Beyond pursuits. Firstly, I love Universes Beyond. You'll probably never meet a larger Lord of the Rings fan than me. And even the IPs that I'm not an active fan of, I'm mostly fine with being inside the game. Yes, even Transformers and Fortnite. I am pro Universes Beyond. Universes Beyond showcases the robust game system that is Magic the Gathering for people who would have never touched it if it had been Chandra instead of Galadriel. So why not stop making in-universe content and pursue the most popular IPs to aggressively keep reaching new audiences? Why not kick Jace to the curb in favor of the Lorcana business model? Why not staple SpongeBob to the next tentpole release of Magic the Gathering instead of Lorwyn? Pokemon has felt fated to the color pie ever since Universes Beyond became a thing. Pikachu would sell a lot of packs and you could print a one-of-one Mewtwo card. My counterpoint to that starts in the late 1990s, during the CCG boom. Let me offer you the shallowest amount of history from that time. In 1993, Magic the Gathering was the very first collectible card game, and it was unbelievably popular. Like, think about how popular you think it was then, and quintuple that. Now other companies saw that and wanted to ride that wave too. And there was a boom of collectible card games based on all of your favorite fandoms from that era. Overpower was a Marvel vs. DC fighting game. Dune had a collectible card game. Star Trek had a card game. Dungeons & Dragons, then owned by TSR, also had several card games. And let's not forget the impossible to play, but no less awesome, Middle-earth collectible card game. And finally, the king of all dead collectible card games that weren't Magic the Gathering, Star Wars, the collectible card game. Every single one of these was an IP vastly more well-known than Magic the Gathering, which at the time barely even had a story anyone could follow. In 1995, when I started playing, I had no idea that all these cards had a shared mythos. It was just a fun game that played well and had cool art. And aside from Yu-Gi-Oh!, which overhauled its game system to be functionally unrecognizable from Pokemon, which it was based off of initially, every one of those CCGs failed because of three major issues. 1. Magic the Gathering was a vastly well thought out game created by a very talented game designer that took into consideration the game's balance, the amount of space needed to play in a local gaming store, and I'm looking at you, Star Wars and Middle-earth CCGs, and the game's scope. A little more on that later. 2. Those other games were from finite universes. Do you remember when there were only 3 Star Wars movies? Every expansion of the Star Wars collectible card game was just basically stuff that happened while they were on that one planet in each episode. You had both the base set and New Hope for episode 4, Hoth, Dagobah, and Cloud City for episode 5, Jabba's Palace, Endor, and Death Star 2 for episode 6. And then they sort of ran out of content until the prequels came out, which took 5 more years. And spoiler alert, the Star Wars collectible card game went defunct in December of 2001. And yes, I know the fan community is vibrant and they still run tournaments and they still make new cards based on all the new IPs that are coming out through Disney and stuff like that. There are Mandalorian cards, that whole thing. And they distribute it for free. But look, that's not a business model. They ran out of official content. It's not like they could just be like, okay, we're going to do this with the exact same system, except for we're going to add characters from The Last Starfighter, Hardware Wars, and Battlestar Galactica. It just would not have worked. And Star Trek maybe would have had a chance at that. There's plenty of Star Trek content, but people stopped playing that game because of the insane power creep. Like, how is Quark better than Captain Kirk? To succeed as a card game for over 30 years that puts out basically monthly content, you need to be your own ever-expanding universe. And the final reason is easy to explain if you understand anything about the changing world of IP ownership. Look at the current Marvel movies and how come they can't have X-Men or Spider-Man and that sort of stuff. The proclivities of IP owners change constantly. And that changes the landscape of how these things are navigated. And it's always in flux because of laws that none of us can control, no matter how good we are at casting Terminus off the top of our deck. Magic is a collectible card game first. And that is why it endures. It is expected that Magic the Gathering will always be a collectible card game first and foremost. Let's consider the long-term viability of Magic the Gathering if they ditch their in-house IP and sail directly into the sun in pursuit of more popular IPs. Certainly there is money to be made in the short term. Tons, most likely. Lord of the Rings is the second best-selling set in the 30-year history of the game and on track to be the best-selling set by the holiday season. And maybe the current wave of Universes Beyond is enough to satisfy the current round of stockholders. And those Hasbro C-suite executives can walk into the sunset richer, while plague-winding the game. They aren't likely to be Magic the Gathering stewards in the next 10, 20, or 30 years. So what have they got to lose? Well, for consequences, let's look at the most recent Pro Tour. Pro Tour Lord of the Rings. A great event by any measure. The One Ring and Orcish Bowmasters saw tons of play and are staples in every format that they're legal in. And that's great news! It's 5 years later, and new players need the One Ring to be able to compete competitively in Modern, and Orcish Bowmasters is a $200 card because of the narrow window of reprint opportunity it has. And even knowing in the real world that WotC can make universes in reprints of these cards, like they've done for Street Fighter and Stranger Things, we already know people are worried about this in the future. What happens when every single product has this choke point? How do you reprint Anakin Skywalker, the Death Star, and Jar Jar Binks from Magic the Gathering's 2028 marquee set, Star Wars: Duel of the Fates? Suddenly, every staple card needs a reprint, and you just can't cobble them all together into some Universes Beyond master set. Do you think Disney's just going to rubber stamp an okay on any set that includes Star Wars and Superman and X-Men and Gandalf? It's not going to happen. And there's a ton of red tape to bushwhack through. Actively building Magic the Gathering's in-house IP solves this problem. Not perfectly, because they're still going to have to make sure that their contracts account for this sort of thing and allow reprints and in-universe builds of the cards that are unique to the things that they made. But better with than without, for sure. And that's why we are getting new worlds like Bloomburrow and Duskmourn. Magic's multiverse is both familiar in its lore and areas that we already know and play, but offers endless opportunity to expand with new worlds. There is an infinite amount of genres that Magic the Gathering can explore. And that is a wide open avenue in how to get other companies' IPs into your game in in-universe reprints. Magic's even going to space in a couple of years. And then reprinting Star Wars cards seems like a pretty easy lift at that point. Magic's strength is the flexibility and unending expansiveness of its IP. It can continuously tack on mechanics and characters ad nauseum. And it's that infinite scope that allows Magic to be anything the designers want without losing its identity as a game. Magic's superior design from day one has allowed it to weather the storm of 30 years to Pretenders of the Crown. The game stewardship may change over time, but it's unlikely to fail if abandoned by those currently in charge. Fans of the game will remain. I've been playing Magic the Gathering for 28 years, Dungeons & Dragons for 30. I've seen the ownership change hands and the leadership come and go. The game is the one thing that remains. So what do you think? Should Magic shed its IP for the most popular trends? Or are you not ready for a Taylor Swift versus Gem and the Holograms duel deck yet? Get in the comments and tell me how you feel. I'm actually really excited to discuss more on this topic. Here's that video I was talking about with Joe Cherries. Give that a look. It's really great. Joe talks about a lot of really cool stuff in this. Also, if you can give me a subscribe, that'd be awesome. We're so close to monetization. Hey, and have a great day.